Greetings, comrades, and welcome to the Eastern Border. And today we have another great friend of our show, whom I'm now seeing in the webcam. We have Mr. Heaton from Political Orphanage on the show to talk about economy. Because you see, Central Bank of Russia I have watched a 5-hour presentation of them why they raised their interest rates, and we'll talk about that in detail too. But they have blamed people who like cryptocurrency, and especially libertarians of Russia, including in them, for some reason, small business owners and retailers, as their number one enemy, as they claim that inflation is caused by greedy retailers raising their prices, and that they have problems with electricity in the southern regions near the Ukrainian border caused by evil crypto miners who steal energy, especially in times of war and Ukrainian drones and all this stuff. But apparently, well, congratulations. I wanted you to come on the show because I associate you in my head with more libertarian approaches, so I want to go straight to the source of all Russian problems, economic-wise.
All Russian evil. I am the bête noire of the Russian people. I am the cause of all of your problems. Andrew Heaton, and everybody else that likes Milton Friedman. Yes, we're all very much kind of delighted to hear, apparently, Christoph, that the free enterprise limited government people are so powerful in Russia, because we do not have a lot of influence in the United States at this time. I'm a little bit surprised that a former Soviet country, which is presently an autocracy with a weird kleptocratic command economy structure, would have such an outsized influence of libertarians in it. But you know what? I'll take the deal. I didn't realize that we were doing so well.
Yeah, so basically, the whole issue here was that Elvira Nabiullina Sahibzadovna, because you have to have a patronymic here as well, she just went on a triad which was tantamount to basically treason in Russia, in a way, since, to them, everything is going fine. No issues whatsoever. And dear listeners, we will touch upon the gadget law as well, straight on later on, because those who listen to my show regularly know, because I've been following this gadget law because I haven't seen so much weird, angry posts there. However, she came out last week and she spoke about how she's raising the interest rate.
That's quite high. 18%, very high.
The cheapest mortgage you can get in Russia currently, the cheapest one with worst kind of things put in there, is 23.5%, because that's just the central bank one.
Wow, okay. Buy your house outright in Russia. Don't get a loan. Can I back up a little bit? Because you mentioned a moment ago that the reason that inflation is happening is because greedy retailers are raising their prices.
That is the official explanation. That's how they call it. But I can tell you the real reasons, though, but that's the whole thing.
I would love to hear the real reasons in a moment. I'd like to touch on this idea that greedy merchants are raising prices, and that's a cause of inflation. This is a line of economic thought that goes all the way back to the Middle Ages, when people understood economics as a product of sin. That if people were less greedy, prices would go down. If people are greedy, prices go up. It's a sin-based economic worldview. We still have it. It never went away. I think it's probably the default economic interpretation for people that have never studied economics, just the idea that if rent is going up, it's because landlords have become more greedy.
Well, sometimes in case of huge private equity firms, which tend to ruin things, it tends to be, but not always, definitely not always.
I will posit to you, Christoph, that the evil, greedy private equity firms are operating at maximum greed at all times. When the private equity firm's profit goes down, it's not because the CEO has decided to spend more time with his family and has decided that profit's not that important to him anymore. The model of self-interest might fluctuate from person to some extent, in the sense that I value my freedom and I value my free time more than I value money. So if we want to say that I'm less greedy than other people, perhaps, but the self-interest is operating, and particularly for companies and for businesses, they want to make a profit. They want to make the most profit they can. So blaming rising prices, blaming inflation on greed is like blaming air crashes on gravity. You're looking at something that is a constant that's happening all the time. And it's a great scapegoat because no one likes merchants. They're always the least popular segment of society going back to the Middle Ages.
Unlike podcasters.
Unlike podcasters. Everybody loves podcasters. So I'm not surprised that they would blame them, but I don't think it makes sense. And particularly when you're looking at the inflation that's gone on globally, I tend to assume it's a monetary phenomenon brought about by central banks. Something that would mitigate somewhat against my position on this is the fact that it's happened everywhere. which would indicate that it's something going on more than central banks. But at the same time, the idea that the prices have risen because all of the companies got greedy simultaneously, for that to work requires all of them to collude on prices, not just in their field, but with every other field people could conceivably spend money on. Movie prices are going up. That means all the theaters have to agree we're going to jack up prices, and we have to get together with mini golf and brothels and any other conceivable entertainment field that people might spend money on. Because if the movies increase their prices, maybe people will just do mini golf. So it involves a level of global corporate collusion that's so high, it beggars imagination. And I do not accept the Russian government's interpretation of why their inflation's so high. Also, how the shit did they get through the feudal age, through fucking Marxism, and then go back to sin-based feudal economics? How do you do that?
Because conspiracy theories are super popular there. They blame everything on everyone. They're fans of that thing. No, but the real situation is that, which is, like I told you, there is a chance that the war might just peter out eventually. I give it, like I said, about 20%, but that's because despite all the troubles Ukraine is having, Russia is having also a lot more troubles. Like their equipment, they're losing the FPV drone war, which is causing them a lot of damage, including on Russian territory. And apparently, they constantly up the prices, up the monetary instant benefits they give to soldiers who would like to sign their contracts. It's gone up to 2 million rubles at this point near Moscow, which is, remove some zeros from it, that's about $20,000 for your first signing up.
Wait, hold on. If you're in like Kamchatka, can you just like get a 1 month sublet in Moscow and get that sign up bonus? Like if you were already going to join in Kamchatka,
people actually travel to Moscow to sign up there, which is causing trouble.
Right? See, because people respond to incentives. This is something we've learned since the goddamn Dark Ages.
Yeah, but also like in Kamchatka, the payments are like, 400,000 rubles, which is about $4,000. Like 100 rubles is about $1, approximately. It's like that on the black market. But the problem is that's way higher, and the payments that they receive is way, way higher than the average salary. And like people, they ban these gadgets on the front line, which basically disturbs everything because it relies on them.
And when you say gadgets, you mean the smartphones?
Smartphones, all sorts of gadgets, even like everything that helps, even like if you have a climatoric aim thing on your rifle that can do some video thing, that's also kind of bad now. That's not going to be enforced, just selectively, so that there could be some extortion going on. But the idea is that Russia is facing economic troubles because the Russian government keeps borrowing a lot of money and then just throwing it in, and those soldiers who come from poor communities, then they go to Moscow, get their money, instantly give it back to their families, and it just instantly goes into the market. Imagine what happens then if you, on average, make 20,000 rubles per month, and in your village of, 1,000 people, suddenly, 10 people go and get these huge amounts of cash, which instantly flows straight into their economy.
So in effect, they're printing money and then distributing it through the military as opposed to doing it or trickle down through banks or something like that. Am I reading it correct?
Paying way much more than people would get. There's a huge influx of just cash in the economy in insane amounts. Because otherwise, all these people who wanted to go and participate in a war for less, they're kind of out there. And the Russian government understood that mobilization after the last whole mess was unpopular. And I wrote an article recently in Foreign Policy magazine showing that the average Russian just wants the war to end, doesn't care about the propaganda materials, and they're just throwing out money, and they're borrowing lots of money because, the West have frozen a bunch of their assets, and they have to borrow a bunch of money, and they have to borrow it outside of Russia, not internally, because the internal market of bonds, your average Russian person has stopped believing in Putin in a way, because if the war touches you personally, then you don't like it. So there's a lot of influx. Basically, they have to borrow money from China, and then they kind of have to blast it into economy. And of course, if there's an influx of money in the economy, then the private sector, this uptick of governmental payment, and they need a lot of soldiers, your average person working for a private company kind of has to, decide on this. And with the gadget ban, a lot of people just don't know what's happening. A lot of people don't know the exact amounts of casualties that Russia is taking and all this stuff.
Wait, because these are two separate issues. So I want to pause you.
No, it's tied to this, because normally they wouldn't go there for less money because they're informed. So now they're trying to limit the information amount and pump up the money.
Got it. Okay.
So the private business now has to match the salary given by the army, although the salary is often like not even paid, but not like the guys are, they're getting paid their first payment, but the salaries afterwards then can just sometimes they get still in the front and everything.
Let me make sure that I'm following you so far, because there's a lot coming at me. I want to make sure I understand this. And to be honest with you, I have a limited grasp of microeconomic inflationary policy theory. I'm okay at it, but I'm not an economist, so I want to make sure I understand the parts coming at me.
But you also have the skill to be funny, which is nice.
I do. I'm much funnier. While I'm less educated than an economist, I'm going to argue I'm slightly handsomer than your average economist.
I would agree, yes.
Much funnier than your average economist, for sure. For sure. Okay, so inflation is typically attributed to too much money chasing too few goods. So if you're injecting liquidity, if you're injecting money into the money supply, but you're not having a corresponding increase in goods and services, that's going to result in inflation.
Of course. And think about this. All the things they could spend money on were basically Western-made goods, which are no longer available.
Okay, so
there is not enough goods.
So you don't have an increase in goods and services, and in fact, you probably have an incredible winnowing down of goods and services, because a lot of the labor is going into the war, and presumably a lot of the manufacturing is going into the war effort. So you have fewer goods and services that are available than existed 4 years ago, and you've got more money, which is causing inflation to occur. And then the bit that I find interesting that's new to me is, because you have these high salaries that are being given by the army to the soldiers to induce them to sign up, the corresponding private sector has to respond in kind in order to compete whatsoever? Okay. Why not the smartphones?
Because you know what happens on the front line? If you are a new soldier who's just received all this money and you've sent it to your family and you've bought yourself some better equipment, then the Russian government is not very good at supporting this stuff. You come to the front lines with all this fancy gear, and then there's this old guy who's survived for 2 years in this war, and he's received basically nothing. There is a certain amount of undocumented interactions happening there with the whole situation, of course, as well. So, and there's also like these infamous meat assaults and everything else, and just extortion, and the government just wants to control information flow, so they decided that they're just going to ban this stuff, which causes a bit more issues because now everyone's worried. But right now, the situation is the fact that, just to explain, 88% of Russian businesses now suffer deficit in the amount of people that they have, that they can get to work for them. They're all suffering shortages of labor. That also causes the kind of, you want to keep the existing one and not let them go to the army, which causes Mr. Putin, who's very much a Soviet man, because, a KGB colonel, you can't just stop being a KGB colonel at one point. And he just does not understand this. And he's demanding these explanations. And it's weird looking at these very Western-minded economists who run the whole economy system, because they're kind of less politically oriented. They're not as fanatical as anyone else. They actually, know how economy works. And it's funny to look at...
My understanding with the Russian economy is that it's not so much Western style as just kleptocratic, where it's just about... It's a lot of... favoritism, nepotism, my buddy, insofar as Putin can have friends, that guy's in charge of the communications industry and he's pocketing it. But it's a sclerotic, corrupt economy, right? Like it's...
Yes, 100%. Okay. It's based on that. But now the guys who are supposed to balance the budget and everything, when you watch the whole thing, they are obviously, they need to find scapegoats for this. And sadly, number one scapegoat was the Libertarian Party of Russia. And retailers.
Really? Wow. Because I do know a little bit about Russian politics, and any effective opposition party is banned in Russia, going back a ways now, where Putin came in, he consolidated all of the governors under him, where previously the various states within Russia were independently elected, and he went, nope, the governors are now appointed by the Kremlin. It would be like if Joe Biden appointed all of America's governors. And then any party that got remotely big compared to Russia First was abolished. So you have it would be like if, again, I'm just using Biden here because he's the current president in the United States. If the Democrats banned the Republican Party and the Libertarian Party, but allowed the Minnesota Garden Gnome Party and the Female Circumcision Party or something, like only fringe parties to operate in order to create the illusion of a democratic process. So again, the Libertarian Party of the United States, which has not been banned, is not a force within American politics. It is, the Harlem Globetrotters? Are you familiar with that group? They always play the Washington Generals, and the Washington Generals always lose. That's the Libertarian Party of the United States. Like it's not getting elected to anything. It would be amazing to me if they had more clout in Russia. If that actually was, that I reject Putin's assessment of this scenario.
And then the second issue that they're running into is that constant strikes on oil refineries by drones and electricity, because, well, that causes this. And they decided that instead of admitting the fact that their anti-air defenses might not be working and that Ukraine has found a way how to damage them, they now have blamed libertarian-run crypto farms for their woes.
What? How are the libertarian? Are the theory here is that the Russian libertarians are actively, willfully helping the Ukrainian insurgents? They're like sending them money for drones?
Oh, no. It's just that they are mining crypto so much that it actually disrupts Russian energetics.
Oh, okay.
Which would be frankly amazing for a country that has insane amounts of oil and gas and all the energy, stuff.
Yeah,
But,
I'm with you on that. Like, isn't one of the big issues in Europe is that they get their energy from Russia?
Yes.
Do they run? I don't know the answer to this. Does most of their electricity come from oil refineries? We don't tend to have a lot of oil refinery electricity in the United States at this time.
They do have a lot of oil refineries. So, nuclear too, yes, but a lot of just old school. So the stuff that was built in Soviet era worked on coal and oil and all this stuff, like thermal energy.
It is a petrostate. I can't think, other than those tiny dolls that sit inside of other dolls, I can't think of anything that Russia exports. There's caviar, those wooden Kashinka dolls, and oil. Like, it's a petrostate. Like, it's a petrostate economy.
And of course, comrade, AK-47s for everyone.
AK-47s. Yeah, AK-47s for everyone, yeah.
Like I mentioned that in my episode where I actually finally did an episode of AK-47. They are so simple, children can use them, and many do.
Nice. Great. That I blaming the Bitcoiners on that. They're okay. They are really energy intensive, the Bitcoin mines, but
yes,
of
course.
I assume that they're also paying for the electricity, right? Like they're having to pay if you're using that much electricity, you're paying more for the electricity. Okay. Us Western-style economists would say that the best way to handle those situations is to use a pricing mechanism. And so if you really are concerned about it, you could put in some sort of progressive arc of when you start doing above X, you pay double or something like that. But I hate to question Putin so much, Christoph, but I do not think that that's the likely cause of their energy problems.
I would also highly, highly hate to do anything so horrendous such as questioning the great leader of Russia. Yeah, at this point, they're kind of dependent even on North Korean deliveries.
Really? For what?
For ammunition stuff, because they are even working in 3 shifts. They can't really produce that stuff on their own. Like on Solovyov Live, like the biggest propaganda channel Russia has, even there, the invited experts who were obviously vetted like 900 times before they were even invited there, even they admitted that without North Korean help, Russian front would collapse because Putin just refused demobilization.
Wait, is that the show? I watched the Alexander Navalny documentary, and there's some Russian show where they have like 4 people sit in a white pit. It's like they're inside of a circular room, and they're sort of like... It's really weird. The ergonomics of it are very bizarre. Like, it makes me feel uncomfortable watching. Is that the show we're talking about?
Yes.
So that's like the agitprop version of the McLaughlin group in Russia?
Yes, pretty much.
Great. Yeah, nice. And
like if even state propaganda says it, it's kind of weird because right now it seems that the funniest thing that happened is that they're now holding a contest for like in certain regions of Russia that's closer there. They're holding a contest for school children about who can after school in curricular activities screw together more kamikaze drones, and if you do, you get to go to a camp in North Korea.
Wow.
For kids.
Very different after school specials than we had in Oklahoma growing up. I'm thinking real hard here. I don't think I ever put together a kamikaze drone when I was in school. Nope, no, I don't think I did.
Yeah, but like the whole idea about the whole prize thing, I mean, one of those show-offy things, and it's just getting very weird.
Wait, and they get to go to North Korea to a camp?
Yeah, as a prize. You can get to a summer camp in North Korea.
Well, for the record, I want to say is anybody can go to camp in North Korea if they want to. Like, if you go to North Korea and go, I would like to go to a camp, they'll put you in a camp. Like, literally anyone in the world can show up to North Korea and be put into camp. That is not hard to do. That is one of the reasons that I will not visit North Korea, because I've got a smart mouth on me. And I'm real worried that, I think legally Americans can go to North Korea. I don't believe there's any prohibition on the travel. But I'm I don't trust myself to not say something funny and then spend the rest of my life in a camp. So yeah, if North Korea were like, hey, do you want to come to summer camp? I'd be like, no, I'm gonna turn that down. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's just all the weirdness. But again, I want to talk specifically how this credit stuff is affecting people, because at this point, approximately, it's again the weird law of 80-20 distribution, because it's very strange how it applies in this case as well, because I read the statistics, and currently 20% of Russian families spend 80% of their income on just paying off their debts. Very weird Pareto law application, but yeah.
Yeah, and so, okay, and I don't know the makeup of the Russian economy, particularly on a consumer level, but is the idea that just everybody's so cash-strapped that they're getting into debt, like it's credit card debt for groceries and things like that?
Yeah, literally, because unlike here in EU or even the States, the payday loans are unregulated completely, and they're living way beyond their means, because that's considered awesome in traditional culture there. Your wife has to have a shuba, a big fur coat, for winter, or you're not a cool dude, even though you can't afford it.
Hi everyone, Annette here. Thank you for listening to another episode of The Eastern Border. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all of you who are supporting us on Patreon or via our website. Your financial support is really what keeps this show going, so thank you from the bottom of our heart. If you're not a Patreon and would like to become one, head over to our Patreon page, patreon.com/theeasternborder, or support us via our website, www.theeasternborder.lv. That said, hope you're enjoying this episode, and talk to you later. Bye!
As we're coming back to this, comrades, because I got a quick call.
No, that's great. Are you going to do a cool commercial break in there where you you promote athletic greens?
I want to promote a very special thing. I saw Wallace running behind you.
Yeah.
And I do have to say that my fellow Latvian honorary citizen there, because, look, it doesn't have any strength in law. It's just a PR thing that we do for cool stuff. But I'll be getting a printout, cool, with all paper diploma forms and everything. And yes, indeed. Through my efforts, I congratulate Comrade Wallace in now being an honorary Latvian.
I am fucking thrilled. Okay, so the Latvian government is giving my dog honorary citizenship?
Yes.
That's phenomenal.
It was thrown in together with all the other stuff. We have a Latvian Culture Foundation, the same thing other countries have, Cervantes Institute for Spain, Goethe Institute. And we have a similar issue, and you can just add things in there. Doesn't obviously carry real law thing.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, Wallace is very unlikely to vote. He doesn't tend to travel outside of the United States a lot. I don't feel like it's going to have a lot of functional differences.
But it's a really cool diploma that looks nice.
Yeah. No, I'm going to put it in my office for sure. That's not even fridge worthy. That's office worthy. Wallace is now a Latvian citizen. I'm totally going to put it in my office. When you say they voted on it, is the cultural ministry voted on it?
I just managed to get him on the list of people, and we can give cities the citizenship. We can give whomever you want, basically. And there's this, they do it every couple of months or so, and I just got his name on the list, and then they voted for the list, and now
nice.
Legally, yes.
This is the highlight of my day. This is absolutely thrilling. What a weird, funny personality attribute for Wallace to have. He's a Latvian dog. Not a lot of dogs become Latvian at age 5, but Wallace has. Wallace is now a Latvian dog. Thrilled, absolutely thrilled.
No, because again, comrades who are listening to this, we happened upon this idea as I was staying and eating Wendy's at Heaton's home. I still miss Wendy's. No Wendy's in Latvia. After you did all these excellent ads for me, which by the way have helped, and some of your listeners also.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. Oh, I forgot I did that. Yeah, your listeners might remember my voice from the ads where I'm pushing you on Patreon and stuff.
Yeah, thank you about that. And I thought this would be kind of a funny and nice way how to repay you. And this has been done now.
The debt is repaid and then some, and I am thrilled. This is indeed something we were talking about, where Christoph and his lovely wife stayed with me here in Austin for a few days. Was very happy to have him and have them and show them around. We were getting Wendy's, and Christoph was making offers of, maybe I could send you a decommissioned Soviet nuclear map. And by the way, Bob very much wants that. The guy with the hummingbirds. He has hit me up on this. So he wanted me to
send me his address. Those Soviet maps, they cost about like $30 to buy them, and then plus shipping costs. So
you could totally run some side gigs.
I am doing that, by the way, actively. So everyone else, the problem is as they are kind of they're on the iffy legal status, so sometimes they get mailed back to me and get a longer time to get there. But I do send them. I recently had to resend about 5 of them once again, because our postal service is just, depending on the worker on the sorting center, they're like, is this okay? Is this not okay? So I just have to redo the documentation and add some stuff on it. But in general, yeah, if you want a Soviet map, which is there for the Soviet military, and it depends on the time. The oldest maps go back to 1950s. The youngest ones go to about like late 80s. The idea is that all the European maps, by the way, they're almost gone, and because we get a lot of European tourists coming to Latvia, and they would buy them. Well, we have a bunch of maps of United States, South America, Australia, all these places where we don't normally get tourists from, and they're just laying there and collecting dust. And you can have them if you want to. So.
Okay, me being the evil, feckless, tiny government, free enterprise entrepreneur character from the West that's destabilizing Russia, I would be remiss if I didn't ask, how can you make a buck off of this, Christoph? Can we go to easternborders.com/Soviet nuke map porn or whatever?
You will have to email me, because I have to get some documentation from you, because again, it's iffy to mail them. But actually, I don't make a buck out of this, except those people who actually ordered them normally they're my patrons anyway, and that's a nice way how to incentivize this and spread the good word out. I actually don't make a buck of them. I refuse to. I refuse to do that on this occasion. I just
Well, in Bob's case, it's a nice thing, because Christoph's lovely wife, who by the way, I mercilessly teased while she was here. She would walk into the room and I go like, "Hey, do you know, in America, I'm considered very handsome. And she'd have to kind of like, oh, yeah, is that true? And I'd be like, yeah. And I'm also considered very successful here. And she'd be like, oh, okay, that's really good for you. And I'm like, yeah, right, everybody? And would just like get her to play this horrible game with me.
Talking about all the YouTube stuff, YouTube videos. This is, by the way, interesting, because right now, Russia is also now slowing down the functions of YouTube. My last episode was about this. Russia decided that YouTube is bad and evil for everyone. So now they have slowed it down by 70%, because, shockingly, free exchange of information is evil. It's a capitalist invention designed to rot the brains of people.
Yeah, authoritarians don't tend to like that. I assume. I wonder, as we get more and more Starlink-type technology, how easy it will be to actually block things. Because...
Yeah, that's the thing. But that's a weird thing, because Russia... Like I said, not all things are gone from there, because, well, put it bluntly, piracy and just smuggling still functions. So you can still, the Russian army buys Starlink there.
Wait, the Russian army buys Starlink?
And they use it. Yes. Through third-party things, at least so they claim.
Oh, okay. I was about to say, I'm surprised that because Musk originally was, I know he reneged on it, but for a while he was providing Starlink for free to the Ukrainians, and then was afraid he was going to cause a war or something, and so dropped out of it. But I'd be very surprised if he went 180 and started giving it to Russia.
No, he's just like, I don't know, they're just buying them off there. But about the weird parts, and to get back to the original topic somewhat, the big issue is that China is profiting the most out of all the situation, as they're selling these drones, because FPV drones, of which I'm a pilot of, as you know, as you've seen, where these people came there, that was a funny story. China is just selling the drones to everyone, including Ukrainians. And recently, on one of those shows that you also saw, a Russian propagandist came out, and I need your comment on this, because he claimed that the Chinese government will not get into details anyway. They're kind of stupid like that. So Russians are losing the drone part of the war with their own issues. And they said that they need to paint a drone in Ukrainian colors and strike the power of Siberia, the gas line which provides China with gas from Russia, and then blame it on Ukrainians so that China would stop providing that. He said on television. And now we're kind of pretty sure that even if Ukrainian special forces do some sort of strategic explosion, I don't know why would they do that. But what do you think? Do you think that China would fall for a drone painted in Ukrainian colors about 1,000 kilometers from actually where the war is happening, striking an underground pipe to disrupt it? I kind of don't buy it.
I think China has got some real good strategy chops, and I think China's going to do just fine in this conflict. I would, if I wanted to bet on who's going to come out on top in this whole conflict, I would say China, more so than America, incidentally. Now, I don't want to get into a whole foreign policy argument with you, but I do think that a lot of our commitment to Ukraine is not so much part of it's pro-Ukraine, but part of it's just anti-Russia. We want to bleed Russia, and so we're willing to spend a lot of money to do it, to try to destabilize them. China's not giving them money. They're selling them stuff, and they're loaning them out. So China's going to do great. They're not losing any cash on this, and they're not losing any blood or treasure or anything like that. So I think they're doing very well strategically from the whole conflict.
And to the point, I recently watched a very pro-trade union YouTube channel called More Perfect Union.
Oh, yes.
And they wrote about the huge waste in the American aid packages. Like, a lot of the money that should be going for aid and actually making more jobs is just going for dividends and paying off CEOs.
Yes, I've not done a journalistic deep dive on this, but it is my understanding that we are hemorrhaging so much money in those aid packages to Ukraine that Zelensky has asked for us to audit them, because the people receiving the aid are going, hey, we're not getting the money we thought we were getting here because there's so many intermediaries taking a bite out of it along the way. Yeah.
There's a criticism also on a lot of this aid because it looks like the politicians, they promise this huge number of aid, but then a bunch of it gets pocketed. And then this huge number, it irritates the Ukrainians because they were promised actual aid and they expected it to be done efficiently. And then they get like much less of it. And then the average person also, looks at this and says, hey, it's like, it's neither there nor there. The same with Latvia, because again, I'm going to mention FPV drones here. We recently had a new company that collected a bunch of money from a lot of people to just give aid to Ukraine and in the form of drones. But as very few people actually know how these drones operate and work, they kind of charged about $1,500 for a drone that costs $350. So much time, like so much profiteering. And then I think that the American people would also be a bit more happier if the aid numbers would be like, cut in half, but then used to actually give some aid, and then the rest of the money would be spent on your economy instead of just that being wasted. Because the corruption there is just insane.
Yeah, I'm generally of the opinion if we're spending tons of money, there's a lot. I mean, there's a homeless deaf man that is out near me here in Austin that he's lobster red from sunburns. He screams all the time, either because he has Tourette's or trauma. I'll put backpacks together for him where I put in granola bars and toiletry items, and I'll put in like a pad of paper and pens and things so he can communicate. So I'm doing what I can. But like when I see that kind of stuff, I'm like, we have a lot of problems domestically that I would prefer that we fix before we start throwing it around. The best argument that I've heard of in terms of like from a fiscal perspective, from America giving arms to Ukraine is that I did not know this, but apparently bombs expire. I just sort of assumed that bombs were shelf stable the way Twinkies are for 50 or 60 years. But
the problem with the bombs is also why EU doesn't provide as much as they could, is that we have a very stupid standard that if you make a bomb or a shell, like the powder in itself can get like...
It has to be organic. It has to be like organic and not have any...
Yeah, but the big issue is the fact that they have to have a shape... Because everyone in Europe still operates by peacetime laws. So they're like, this bomb has to remain available. Like, you have to produce it in such a quality that it will remain, and like it can sit in the shelf for like 20 years. The problem is the bomb's going to be used in, 15 minutes? Like, you send it, it's going to get used.
Right. So, well, in the United States, say we have a ton of bombs, and apparently a bunch of them are just going to run out, and we'll have to destroy them anyway. So I don't remember. There's some analyst that's pointing out, for people like me that are on the skeptical side of this, that it makes sense to go, look, we're getting rid of these anyway. Let's just give them to Ukraine. So
yeah.
that bit would appear to be somewhat fiscally neutral. But when it comes to just the big chunks of money, whenever there is a triad of a lot of money, urgency, and a social situation that is difficult to question, that is a perfect storm of corruption happening there. And like aid in the United States, I think there's a lot of track records of there's a lot of hands that just dibble in a little bit. So like a few years ago, maybe this is like 20 years ago now, there was a big tsunami that caused all sorts of problems throughout Asia, incredible toll on lives and the economy. And so American aid packages came to the rescue. And when you started getting into them, by the way, I'm really shooting from the hip here because this is something I've not thought about in 20 years. But what I remember reading about was we would do things like, this village has been decimated by a tsunami, so we're going to send them money. But what we're really going to do when you get into the nuts and bolts of it is we were going to send the money to rebuild hotels in the area, provided that they were American conglomerates. So in effect, we would send money to this village to build a Marriott. So it was a way of just using the aid to recycle the money for American businesses. I think that kind of thing happens a lot. There's also the question of when it's on a humanitarian level, if it's just a fly-by-night vendor that shows up, a ton of the money, not that was done by the government of the United States, but was done by Red Cross in Haiti a few years ago. When they actually audited it, it was just amazing how much of it was hemorrhaging out because there had been an earthquake. Red Cross would give grants out to a lot of people, but there were a lot of unscrupulous actors that would just rock up and go, yep, I run a daycare. And they didn't really have the time or the resources available to check that. So they'd go, here you go. How many kids? And they'd go, 400 kids. And they'd go, oh, well, you get this amount. So we are in such a triad with Ukraine of it is very socially popular, more so 2 years ago. It is almost unquestionable for large chunks of Congress, a bunch of money, and there's a sense of urgency. And that means that there's just not going to be a lot of scrutinization of it. And hence you have people in Ukraine that want it to be audited.
Yeah, this makes sense because, again, I mean, we do disagree on things sometimes, but as I always say, you're my favorite person with whom to disagree on something.
Even though I'm ruining Russia. Or you can view me as a really good guy then.
No, the big issue about the whole Russia situation is also the fact that recently, to kind of show the whole situation that's happening there, recently they had a major catastrophe on the trains, like in railroads. The problem was that due to how everything functions there and due to how, like, again, I told you about the whole stress situation with how people just lack workers. A guy was running a truck full of sand and he rushed in front of a train. He wanted to just quickly cross one of those rail things.
Hey, you don't want to have a late sand delivery, my friend. That's
why didn't they have barriers there? I don't know, but basically that he caused a massive crash, and turned out that he had been hired despite having 350 unpaid traffic fines.
Wow. Okay, to that guy's credit, though, it sounds like he gets there as quick as he can. If he's got 350 unpaid traffic, like that sounds like the Mario Andretti of sand deliverers. Like, he's going to try to get there really fast. Like, if it was parking violations, I'd be like, maybe he's just sloppy. If it's traffic fines?
I think it's all of them.
Wow. One of my friends back in my DC days was a comedian, Christoph, who he was telling me that he got a ticket for doing a rolling stop. I don't know if you know this term, if you've got it in Latvia, but
now I know because I just passed my theory exam and I'm working hard to get the driver's license so that I can actually drive next time I'm in the States. Aha.
Here's what I'm going to try and do. Since you got my dad or my dog Latvian citizenship, I'm going to try and get you a driver's license in Texas. I'm going to talk to the Texas state legislature to see if we can get you an honorary driver's license. But anyway, what my friend did is he did a rolling stop. This is where instead of coming to a complete stop at a stop sign, you just kind of slow down and roll through it. And the cop came and grabbed him, pulled him over and went, I'm giving you a $300 ticket. You're $300, and all you did was save 3 seconds. And my friend paused and he went, well, yeah, if you only count this one time, but if you add up all the times I've done this, I've saved 10, 20 minutes over the last 10 years.
Oh, man.
I thought that was a good cheeky response.
That is a good cheeky response, but as a person who's now I just did all the theory exams, I also have to admit that it's an extremely irresponsible response, but, it is what it is, I suppose.
Wait, didn't you, you had a car. Is this for an international driver's license as opposed to a Latvian? Because you were driving previously.
I was for a bit, but my girlfriend at the time did most of the driving. I didn't have a license.
Oh, okay. So
I was just practicing. I have a trainee license, which I can actually show you. I have my trainee one that allows me to sit and drive when someone's like next to me. It's called trainee driver's license thing, which I have for now. It's mirror image because, again, but it exists and it's valid until 2027. And that allows me to drive around while just learning how to. And I'm also, I can drive automatic pretty well, but now I'm doing like a manual stick shift.
Nice. Good job.
Just saying.
I don't know how to do that. Also, I'm terrified of roundabouts. Do you guys have roundabouts over there?
Oh yeah, a lot of them. The roundabouts are the best type of crossroads because less accidents happen there.
Yeah, I believe you. Like everything I've read is that they're more efficient. Like stoplights make sense in high intensity areas where you're going to be. Where you've got lots of traffic, but like in kind of like middling, it makes sense because you don't actually have to stop. But we don't have them in Oklahoma, or we have like 3 of them in Oklahoma. I know where they are and I avoid them. So whenever I'm in Scotland, they're terrifying and I like derail the entire country's infrastructure for about 45 minutes.
Another thing, I'll use this to give some news to my dear listeners. Yeah, I also managed to get myself into an army boot camp.
What?
Which is going to happen pretty soon because I have to. My license will expire about like my war journalism one, you see, and I have to have one to go to Ukraine. And that requires that you know how to give combat first aid. It's not just about you basically knowing that stuff. I have to have a paper basically because I got my last license back in 2018 in the States. But now I have to do another one.
Are you doing the boot camp in Ukraine?
No, I'm doing that one in Latvia.
So so you're doing Latvian boot camp. So like, are you going to the Latvian army and doing the boot camp with all the recruits and stuff?
Yes.
How long does that last?
Yes. I'm going to do that for 3 weeks. It's kind of called reservist training in case of whatever. But that's the only way in Latvia how I can get my combat first aid classification thing. And I'm useful to them because I know my FPV drones, which means that I am able to... I'm going to help them learn how to pilot FPV drones, and they're going to give me this document that I need. The problem is if actual combat starts, I'm going to be recruited there, but that's the only way, which means now I have to go and do army stuff. And that's going to be, the worst part is it's going to happen from mid-February until early March in those 3 weeks, which is, I'm going to be doing this in winter.
Multiple follow-up questions for you. First, are you joining the Latvian Reserve Army, or is this just the training process for it?
No, I kind of have to join them, otherwise I can't get the training.
Okay, got it. Okay, so you will be joining this is like the American National Guard, where you are...
No, National Guard is a separate thing. This basically makes you eligible in case there's a draft. Then I'm on the short list of getting drafted.
Okay.
But that's the only way how I can manage all this situation. I can't do it otherwise.
Okay, so theoretically, if Latvia goes to war, you would be called up very quickly.
Yes.
Although having been over there and looked at the maps, if Latvia goes to war with Russia, I feel like everybody would be very involved in the process very, very quickly.
Yes, which is sad but true.
The whole thing is Frisbee distance from Russia. If America goes to war with somebody, provided it doesn't escalate into nuclear war, the likelihood it's going to hit Kansas is pretty minimal. So there's a certain level of abstraction going on. Whereas for a country that is right on the border, almost like an eastern border, like you could have a whole podcast about it. The whole country would get in it. So wait, so will you have a rank and stuff? Do I have to call you like Colonel Christoph or Private Christoph, or what will we? How will this affect our relationship?
At the beginning, I like that question. No, I'll still be called I'll be called Private unless I do the whole commitment thing. But yeah. Sadly, I have to go through this.
Now I feel some peer pressure now to join the Army Reserves. I'm going to kind of look into this just so I can have the similar ranks.
Oh, no. It's just that I have to do it again because that is sadly the only possible way of me actually being able to get my license for journalism renewed, which I find kind of sad, to be honest.
Why do you have to join the Army to get a journalist license? Like, that question doesn't even make sense to me.
No, because to be a it's a war correspondent's license.
Okay.
And to be able to be a war correspondent, you need to have certain papers signed. Otherwise, they just don't let you in Ukraine. Because Ukraine is like facing again.
Got it. Okay, so this is a Ukrainian thing. If you want to go into Ukraine, you have to have a war correspondent license, and in order to do that, you have to have combat training.
No, I have to have the specific first aid training. The combat training is just that is the only way how to get the. Because sadly in Latvia, what we have is three war correspondents, and I'm one of them, and they just don't make specific classes for them. Because the first aid classes you have to take mandatorily if you want to own a gun or drive a car in Latvia are just, well, very much trash. They don't talk because people use tourniquets in a wrong way, and then they cause damage. Because if you apply them the wrong way, that can cause amputations and all sorts of bad stuff.
Right, where the people do it too. Like I my highest level of military training is Eagle Scout and the Boy Scouts. And as I recall, tourniquet was like the last, like this is like you're hemorrhaging. Otherwise, don't bother with it, because the concern was that you would cut off circulation.
Yeah, right now in Latvia, in standard first aid training, you're told to just put on a glove, like a plastic glove that's always in your first aid kit in your car, and just squeeze it until first aid arrives. The problem is that if you're in a conflict zone, first aid can't help. And that was done because people applied tourniquets without, in standard practices, you apply tourniquet above the place where the bleeding happens. And you might think it's common and normal, but a lot of people apparently applied tourniquet below the bleeding place, which didn't work at all.
Really? So you get all the benefits of amputation and none of the benefits of staunching the blood?
Yes. Because
wow.
Informing everyone else, combat tourniquet is applied above the place where the wound happened on your limb, and you also have to take some sort of a big marker thing, which is probably permanent, to the point that you can't just wash it off by sweat, and just type the timing of when do you put on the tourniquet, so that in case of like a mass traumatic event, like those people can get picked out first, because there's a certain time limit to tourniquets. Otherwise, stopping the blood flow to a body part, if it's held on too long, can lead to, bit of a problematic situation there, to put it mildly.
So you're going to be doing this in winter. Now, I've only been to Latvia in the summer. It was lovely. It was a nice 16 degrees Celsius or so when I was over there. I assume it's just 16 degrees Celsius all year round, including in February. It's just kind of a nice, balmy...
A bit. Look, I don't know how to explain this, but the shortest way is that, to our dear listeners, Latvia is on the same latitude, like the same height, on the map, as Anchorage, Alaska. Except it's a bit warmer here, since the Baltic Sea, just nearby. If you know the weather in say, Vancouver, Canada, or Boston, we're a bit colder than Maine, we're a bit colder than Vancouver. It gets down to, like, in February, it can get down to minus 25 Celsius, so I'm a bit scared about that part.
Minus 25 Celsius. Okay.
Minus 25 Celsius.
Which would be...
That's the coldest that we get usually.
I can remember 16 Celsius because it's palindromic, so 16 Celsius is 61 Fahrenheit. So...
it's minus 13 degrees Fahrenheit.
Oh, okay, so it doesn't work the other way. Interesting. That's still pretty cold, though. Minus 13.
This is also why I think that the current view of the whole Russian population there and everything is that it's more and more clear and more open that this war is basically Putin's war. And he just wants to keep it going, because his ultimatum with his peace terms, that was so unrealistic that I don't even... that was just the most unrealistic thing ever, because the things he offered in that peace deal, it was obvious they would never be accepted.
What were the terms in the peace deal? I am not paying as much attention as you are.
Not only Donetsk and Luhansk oblasts, but also Zaporizhia and Kherson oblasts. A reminder: Kherson was in this totally not fake referendum. They control less than 10% of our population in an occupied city, and then those people, under gunpoint, were forced to vote a certain way, because otherwise they would get shot. And then they kind of claim that they want all of these districts too, like Zaporizhia and Kherson as well. It's kind of mandatory for them, which is kind of silly because currently they don't control any of the Kherson Oblast.
This is more territory under these peace terms than, say, the Minsk Accord would have allotted.
Yes, definitely.
Like the Minsk Accord was like, we're going to kind of preserve these eastern oblasts as semi-autonomous, and Russia gets perpetual use of the ports in Crimea, something to that effect. But this is going beyond that.
Yeah, but the problem is that this peace treaty that Trump also supports, mind you, that's his peace plan, basically would involve just a guarantee that after 5-10 years, Russia would just come in with a larger force and just sweep all over Ukraine. Definitely. It is not a peace treaty that would guarantee lasting peace. It's a deal that basically allows Russia to build up their military, but limits Ukraine from joining any international organization and get to any point of safety. And then also it kind of dooms us over here in Eastern Europe, because it basically means that NATO, at least according to these plans, also has to pull out of our countries and leave us alone. And that's kind of a big no-no to me. That's the big issue.
Sure. So there's a couple of things there. I had not contemplated. There's two parts to that. The first part, if I were brokering a deal with Russia, I would have taken the Minsk Accords. I think the Minsk Accords were a smart way to avoid the conflict that we are now mired in. So I would have pushed that. And I think Zelensky was in favor of that, then went some other direction for reasons I'm not entirely sure of. From where I'm at right now, if I were trying to broker a deal with Russia, I would say, what if Ukraine joins the European Union? But we forswear membership in NATO, and we both commit to it being a militarily neutral state that neither Russia nor the Western powers will be involved in. But your concern would be that by doing that, all you're doing is giving time to Russia to build up its military to invade Ukraine later.
Yes.
That would be the natural consequence of that?
That would be the consequence of that, indeed. Just because Putin is not taking all this seriously, he's seeing the troubles that Russia has currently, right? But all the situation there is just proving that Russia is just not doing much, in the sense that I'm trying to word this properly. Russia is like throwing all the technology that they have, but they lack manpower because it's getting more and more unpopular because of all the inflation and all the woes in economics that I told you about. This war is getting less and less popular there. People just don't want to go and die in the front, and I can see that from the very fanatical people who are like Russian imperialists, and they want to expand rapidly. They complain constantly about the people of Russia these days. That's one of the things that they complain about how Russians care more about their own well-being instead of for the glory of the motherland, and how they've gotten the wrong population, all that stuff. And so this is why Putin saw all the mess of the mobilization. Like, he can't do mobilization because that was unpopular, and right now that would be even more unpopular. So all the war is just causing unpopularity of Putin just to increase constantly. So it's just a confusing mess, basically.
Secondary part of what you brought up a moment ago is that the Trump plan, or the supposed Trump plan, would pull NATO out of the Baltics. Now, does that mean that they would be released from NATO membership against their will, or does that mean that we would just pull back anti-ballistic missiles?
That would mean that you would basically, not officially, but technically, yes, you would just leave us to our own fates and look the other way if Russia would ever would decide to do something to us.
Well, so, I mean, Article 2 of NATO is that if an attack against one is attack against all, right? So
Article 5, yes.
Thank you.
And so far, by the way, I have to say that, do you know who the only country is who's ever activated Article 5?
United States, when it was
Yes.
Twin Towers fell, Afghanistan was a NATO operation.
Exactly. So that's the whole situation there, because...
Well, no. So I like noting that we have Article 5 and it's a mutual defense pact. So long as the Baltics remain members of NATO, which to my knowledge nobody is questioning, would not that be a sufficient deterrent to Russia not to invade, knowing that it would automatically be nuclear war?
Well, look, it would be if Putin wouldn't eventually be led to believe that he can get away with everything he wants. So, and also one other thing is that, imagine what would this do to China? Like, if Putin invades and gets a really, really good deal, like something that is just amazing for him and everything he ever wanted, that would just really show other aggressors and other countries that, again, China, that would basically show that, hey, the West is just gonna, let it go and let everything happen.
So invade Taiwan tomorrow. Yeah, I will say I am very hesitant to.
At least that's how I view it.
I'm hesitant to use Ukrainian collateral damage as a deterrent against Chinese aggression. That is a very, very costly for them, costly program to try to do something in another theater. But I do want to go back, though. I just want to make. I'm not even trying to argue with you here. I just want to make sure that I understand this. Mm-hmm. So the implication of the Trump deal, and I don't know if this is something that he's released, if this is a white paper or what. The implication is that the Baltics would stay in NATO. Nobody's questioning whether or not the Baltics would be in NATO, but rather there would be a kind of soft interpretation of, yes, they're technically in NATO, but America wouldn't do anything, and that would empower Putin to come in.
The implication is worded in the sense that United States would very heavily disassociate themselves with anything Europe-related.
Got it. So this is not a Baltic specific. This is a broader question of, like, if Trump got in, he's NATO skeptic. Maybe we would get out of NATO, or maybe we wouldn't have NATO's back. Something to that effect. That
would kind of implicate a lot of things, a lot of stuff happening. Because especially if you look at say Hungary, which is very pro-Russia. Hungary and Slovakia are like the weird countries, because Viktor Orban is basically running a weird dictatorship himself, after all. And they got offended, for example, recently when Ukraine put sanctions on Lukoil, and Lukoil owns the pipes, because all this war, the pipelines that have been going from Russia to Hungary and Slovakia, which are the only two countries that still really depend on Russian oil, they have been left untouched. But right now, after Hungary just decided to go on full weirdness mode, they have just cut down the pipelines, and now Hungary and Slovakian governments are like, you can't do this. And they're like, yes, we can.
I've got a really good idea that I think would solve a lot of problems simultaneously for everybody in America and everybody in Europe. This is my pitch to you. Because I am as you know, I am partial to the theory that increasing NATO expansion has triggered some of the Russian activities that we're seeing, right? So I am somewhat skeptical of NATO. I understand that Europeans are like, look, we need to have America involved in NATO because the American military is so large that it is a massive deterrent to aggressors. We want to have them involved in the program. Simultaneously, everybody in Europe's like, God, American healthcare is stupid. So here's my deal. What if we stay, we fund everything, we even increase funding, but Europe runs our healthcare for us? I think that this would be a really good deal.
You know what? I can't really say about my healthcare because, again, we don't have a choice in the matter here in the Baltics, at least. At this point, yeah, not nice, especially since it's not just Putin that we need to worry about. It's also Lukashenko and Belarus. Iffy at best, right? But I think that could be kind of sorted out. That would be a nice deal because, again, a lot of people don't understand the fact that America has a huge military, but that's at the cost of your healthcare.
Yeah, I think so. So, like, Europe runs our healthcare for us, and then, like, I'm fine dumping money into the military at that point. If we've got, like, you know,
the problem is your healthcare would also have to be very much optimized because all those for-profit clinics, which were created, by the way, because of an argument between Kentucky Fried Chicken and Arby's, because they wanted to make Kentucky Fried Beef at one point, and then the guys who were running all this situation, I literally watched a documentary about this yesterday. The guys wanted to make Kentucky Fried kind of beef, basically to compete with Arby's, but then the guy who was like the son of the owner of the whole thing said, hey, why don't we run hospitals the way we run those fast food chains? And then they went like, oh, that sounds cool. Let's do that.
Is Latvian healthcare completely single payer? Do you pay anything out of pocket?
We do pay out of pocket because a lot of it is like we have to pay some percentage of it. It's not completely free. You have to pay some fees, but it's mostly covered. Mostly.
So it's more free market than the English model where it's just completely single payer.
Yeah, and the thing is that the single payer healthcare in Latvia gets you the basics. Like, you get healthcare, but you have to wait in a longer line and all this stuff. And you can get an extra insurance on top of it to get something, a bit extra. So if you want, say, a nicer stay or hospital, like, or something.
That sounds like, on a vague level, like the Singapore model, where there's kind of a basic social safety net, but then you pay more for perks, you pay more to skip the queue, that kind of thing.
That's how it operates here, yes. And I think it's kind of okay, I suppose, because again, if you want to go and have your government-sponsored healthcare here in Latvia, like for my wife, for example, if you want to get to the state-sponsored, you have to go to your family doctor, and then you have to get an assigned paper that says that you really need this specialist, and then you go and look at where the spots are available, because those special doctors, they're kind of state-sponsored spots. There usually you have to wait in line for a while or something.
Hey everyone, Annette the editor here. This episode became quite long, so we took the decision to split it into two halves. You've just finished listening to part 1, so to hear the rest of the conversation, head over to part 2 and enjoy. Thanks for listening. Bye! Thank you for listening to the Eastern Border Show. If you have any questions or comments, go to our website, theeasternborder.lv, and leave a comment there. Or email us at theeasternborder@gmail.com. We'll be sure to answer. You can also follow us on social media and contact us there. If you enjoyed this episode, then leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and tell your friends about us. It really helps us grow the show. And remember, happiness is mandatory.